Take us back to that moment of frustration.
Connectivity can change lives. This is where I'm going to test my purpose.
What happened to you that made you really want to work on this problem?
So many businesses had to shut down. We were at very early stage.
Why were you so passionate about this problem?
If it's going to break me, then probably I'm not worth doing this kind of change that I'm bringing to society.
What is the most powerful thing that you ever learned from a personal setback or failure? Welcome back to More Unfiltered, folks. Today's guest is a true global innovator who turned personal frustration into groundbreaking impact. After traveling to over 100 countries and battling the pain of expensive international roaming, those of you who have traveled know exactly what I'm talking about. Ahmad Farz decided enough was enough. He set off on a decade-long crusade to reimagine connectivity, believing that cellular should be digital, secure, seamless, and cloud-powered. That vision became Celitech, his company, the premier one-click eSIM platform that now powers traveling giants like Expedia, Kayak, and Alaska Airlines. But Al's story goes far beyond a startup process. He's lived and worked in more than 50 countries, holds 7 patents that turned into products worth hundreds of millions of dollars in sales, and has been recognized globally from the Mobile Breakthrough Awards to the Magellan Gold Award for Travel Innovation. With an engineering foundation from the American University of Beirut, an MBA from INSEAD, executive education at Harvard, and leadership roles that span startups, consulting, and Fortune 100 IPOs, Al embodies what it means to step back, leap forward, and transform frustration into fuel. So please join me in welcoming a pioneer of digital connectivity, a global citizen, and the CEO of Celitech, Al Farz.
Thank you,
Welcome
Patrick.
to the show, Al.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you. I mean, I wasn't expecting that big intro, but thank you for that. It's really humbling.
Well, thank you for being here. And, thank you for everything that you're doing in the space that you're doing, because roaming is hard and roaming is frustrating. And, I've had so many issues myself with roaming. I have a lot less now because I'm using Google Fi and they are not a sponsor of the show, but it is like one of the best solutions I've found. But I have suffered endlessly with roaming. And so I really kind of get where you're coming from and wanting to work on this meaningful problem. But, tell me something as we get started. You've lived in more than 50 countries, right? I think, most people, including probably the vast majority of people who are watching this show, have probably never lived in more than 1 or 2 countries, right? And so how did living in so many countries shape your views on leadership and innovation and change? Let's start with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a full disclaimer, lived and worked. So some of these countries, obviously, I've stayed probably for like few weeks. But coming from INSEAD, I think, as you know, like at INSEAD, you have the opportunity to do like a 10 months MBA within 3 continents, not even 3 countries. You can do Singapore, France, and Philly. So that gave me the training actually to kind of be ready for what I did in my previous startup, which was a global startup, which involved a lot of traveling, a lot of moving to stay a few weeks here, a few weeks there. I learned a lot. I can tell you, like, INSEAD started like that journey, but the journey in itself has been amazingly insightful because we always have things to learn from people and cultures and countries we visit. And for me, every time I visit a new country, it's like a little baby seeing something for the first time. It's like I indulge in the culture, I try the local, sometimes the street food. I get sometimes food poisoning because I might not be used to the local food. But like I indulge myself because, we always put these barriers, between us as human beings. But you can't imagine how much we're close, how much we're the same, how much we share a lot of common human values. And once you start doing that, you feel like you're growing like crazy. You learn on so many levels: leadership, maturity, even little things in life, like, how onions affect your body, like how eating a locally grown onion can help you have some immunity against local diseases, for example. Like a lot of things. And also you can also understand better how certain things don't work in certain countries or certain regions. Like, like whatever works in the West may not work in Japan or may not work in the Middle East. So you start becoming sensitive to these stuff. But yeah, the journey may puts your learning growth on a whole new level.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? It's like the more one travels, the more we realize sometimes that we are so similar, right? We have a tendency to look at other parts of the world, especially here in this country, in the United States, and to think people are so different, right? But at the end of the day, so many people are similar, right? In terms of everybody wants to have a family and everybody wants to do work that gives them meaning and purpose, and everybody needs to pay the rent, and everybody worries about their health, and they worry about retirement, right? So at the end of the day, we're much more similar than we think, and sometimes we forget that, right? Sometimes
1,000%. 1,000%.
Now take us back to Celitech and the origins of that company. And one of the questions I always love to ask entrepreneurs, because this is a show about entrepreneurship, this is a show about leadership and the messy middle of success, right? What it takes to build a successful company. Why were you so passionate about this problem? What is really kind of when you think of your why and you think of why you started this company? Take us back to that moment of frustration where you were like, all right, that's it. I have to do something about this problem.
Yeah, as you started, I've traveled over 100 countries, and as an international traveler, I've experienced this problem consistently in every country I visited. You always have a couple options, mainly a couple options, either using your roaming on your phone, which means you're going to go back home and don't know what to expect with the roaming bill, or, try to get a local SIM card and face all the local barriers in terms of finding the shop, the language, blah, 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 and then swapping the card. So I thought, there can be a solution for this problem. Now, Google Fi is obviously a good example of a company that tried to solve this problem, but given Google scale, I wouldn't say they scaled as much, and that's why I thought I better find a solution for this, because it's again part of what I mentioned earlier. If connectivity helps you open up to the local culture, local community, you'll be able. With connectivity, we at one point in when we were getting started, we wanted to run a study around how much people engage more with the local community when they are connected, and because you feel it without the numbers and without the study, but when you're connected, when you can check where you can go, what you can eat, because you're on a short period of time in a given new culture, So for me, that was the key driver. That besides helping the problem on the technical level, it brings me joy when people can feel that connection to the local place they're visiting, because they're investing so much money from their time, their trip booking, the cost, blah, blah, blah. And if they can enjoy a better trip by being connected easily in a click, maybe when they're doing their booking in a convenient way and in an affordable way, obviously, then why not?
And what, just for our audience, right? Can you tell us a little bit about the company? Tell us a little bit about Celitech. What's the problem specifically that you solve? And at a high level, without getting too technical, how do you solve that?
Yeah, great point. So Celitech is a short of cellular and information technologies. So we saw an opportunity with eSIM. Even before eSIM, I'll tell you about a funny story how it all started even before the eSIM. So when eSIM came out, eSIM is basically an embedded SIM card in phones starting 2018.
So that means, just for our audience, that means that basically you don't have a physical SIM card in your phone anymore, right? It's basically downloaded, correct?
Exactly. So you don't have a physical SIM. You don't have to swap physical SIM cards in your phone to connect to cellular networks. But so now that feature allows a provider like us to give you a QR code or an eSIM link, like a digital service, totally digital, without sending you any SIM card, to help you connect to a local network. So this is the standard technology. What we did is basically we pioneered the concept of a programmable eSIM that fits your trip. Steve Jobs has this saying that we entrepreneurs, the technical entrepreneurs, always make the mistake of starting with the technology and then trying to force it on the people. We thought, you know what? I'm a traveler. I know exactly how many steps, what steps I need to take before I jump on a plane. And I know I'm not going to have the time to sign up for something or wait for a local SIM card. So we thought we can program the eSIM to fit your trip so that you can add it when you book a flight or a hotel. At checkout, you will see an option like travel insurance. You can add the eSIM in a programmable way in one click. So it makes it extremely convenient to kind of combine it with your trip, and extremely converting to our partners, because we're not going to market through app or through a B2C channel. We're partnering with travel companies like Expedia, like Alaska Airlines, like all these big travel companies that already have the traveler to help you get the eSIM when you're booking your trip.
So let's say hypothetically, okay, let's say I go on to Expedia and I'm planning a holiday in Mexico, right? Say I'm going to Cancun and I go in through Expedia and I'm booking my tickets. Then somewhere in the flow of the purchase of my ticket, I would be able to kind of like purchase an option to get an eSIM so that I have a local SIM card when I land in Mexico. Is that how it works?
Yeah, without the SIM card element. So it's going to be like, we're not yet live with Expedia, it's still under pilot, but like what I can share is basically like you add travel insurance at checkout, you can see like an option where you can add eSIM in one click, and you get it by email or text as a link or as a QR code. So immediately once you do the booking, you get it, you have it ready for your trip. Once you land in your destination, in Mexico in this case, you just turn it on and use it.
That's amazing. So like basically I land in Mexico, I turn it on, and I have like a local Mexican number.
So we don't give you a number, we give you cellular data because local numbers sometimes have KYC requirements, and meaning I'm going to have to ask you for your passport and for your photo ID. So we don't do that, because on the flip side, we know that you don't need numbers. Like if you get the cellular connectivity, cellular data only, you can use your WhatsApp, FaceTime, iMessage. Even within Uber, you can call your Uber driver within the app. So you just need cellular data.
That's huge, because so many times people get to like, I've had this, like I land in an airport and like I forgot to buy roaming, right, from my operator, and I landed in an airport and they don't have Wi-Fi. There are places that don't have Wi-Fi in the airport, or where like Wi-Fi is ridiculously expensive or it's not working. And then all of a sudden I have no data and I can't even call an Uber, right? So that has happened to me actually as a consumer. What was the reason why you felt so compelled to work on this? I mean, what I find is like, the most successful entrepreneurs, like they have this like driving need to solve this problem, right? They have like this sense of purpose. What happened to you that made you really want to work on this problem? Take us back there.
It goes back to my early days as a kid, like trying to get education out of an underprivileged community in the suburbs of Beirut, slums I would call them, of Beirut, which during a tough time, like during the end of the Civil War, being raised by a single mom, being the eldest of my siblings. I mean, the internet was basically my hope, my gateway to the American dream. I mean, my gateway to any dream, actually, because back in those days we had dial-up, and dial-up was expensive.
God, I remember that.
Yeah, it was $10 an hour. And, we couldn't afford more than an hour a month, probably. But like my friends used to be kind to kind of give me some of their unused minutes to basically connect to the web and connect to the internet and try to do stuff there. And the stuff that I did were basically trying to learn to, get a job, build websites, try to get TOEFL, get SAT, to get to AUB, get a job. So the internet was like a gateway to an opportunity that helped me break through from the environment where I was born and raised. And that environment was hard, was something I wanted to change. I wanted to break through from, and that light, I would say, was basically my hope and my mean to get to the next level. And so now I'm trying to connect travelers, but like the origin was there in that moment where I saw how the internet can change lives. I mean, we're doing now we're doing it now for travelers, but it can be much bigger. It can be for any type of connectivity, especially now with all the tools you have online. Like even when we talk AI and the cloud and it's I mean, all these tools are amazing, but if you don't have connectivity, like you experience in some of the airports, many countries actually don't have that great of a coverage and or connectivity, and that's why their whole population would be left behind. And now it's going to happen even more with AI, because if you don't have the connectivity, you're not going to be able to use whatever ChatGPT and all these tools because you're not connected. So that was the first kind of real life experience that kind of, made me think, connectivity can change lives. So why, and then the opportunity came after I traveled and saw what's going on with roaming. I thought, you know what? This is a low-hanging fruit with the connectivity. The roaming problem, I can start there and gradually see how I can expand to other verticals. I mean, case in point, because we create eSIM, because we pioneered this programmable eSIM concept that I mentioned that you can add in one click to any booking, at some point we'll be able to add satellites to our eSIM.
Wow.
So we can connect you. So I always say the future of connectivity is having you connected in, through Wi-Fi at home, through cellular networks where they exist.
Yeah.
But now, thanks to SpaceX and other satellite companies that are pioneering this, we can add, satellite service to that same, eSIM, which is in your phone as long as your phone supports it.
So your vision is kind of to be able to provide connectivity wherever people are, basically, seamlessly.
Yeah, that's the dream. It's starting with travelers, and I hope at some point in the future we'll be able to kind of do more locally, let's say, to help with the the digital divide, not only in the US but also like anywhere, because it's becoming like with satellite, the game gonna be even more interesting with connectivity because now you can reach anyone anywhere. Like it doesn't have to be where they only have cellular networks.
So for you, to an extent, it's kind of almost like connectivity is like it's a human right? It's like people deserve to be connected. They need to be connected. You found through your trials in Lebanon, through coming out of the slums of Lebanon in a civil war, that this access to a better life was called the internet, and you want to make sure that people have that kind of connectivity no matter where they are.
This is exactly what I said to one reporter when she reached out when we raised our seed. But then I thought the VCs are not going to like it when you say connectivity as a human right.
VC.
Because you can't monetize that. But true, it's effectively. I mean, if you think about our needs today, I would say. I mean, we used to say whatever, like food, water, safety. I would say connectivity is now among the top maybe 5. So because we do so much online, like our phone is becoming our life with the banking apps. Everything we need to do is now on that small device, and connectivity is basically what powers that device. So yeah, it should be kind of right to anyone.
Is there a risk at times that we are overconnected?
Absolutely. And I told you this when we talked briefly, like before this recording, about how Steve Jobs never allowed his kids to use their iPads over the weekend.
Yeah.
I try to do the same with my daughter as much as I can. But yeah, here in the US, we pioneered, I mean, the telco companies pioneered a few years back this concept of unlimited service. And that kind of amplified the problem, because people, I mean, yes, you need to be connected, but people are not designed to stay behind screens for all their, forever. Like it's a we're social animals. We have to connect as human beings in person, because there are a lot of cues that we cannot get through that device. Like the technology is amazing. Video calling was probably a dream 30 years back. Now here we are talking remotely, and it's all good. But you can see, maybe you can see a lot of stuff that I can convey in person. And on top of that, the problem was also amplified with the social media apps that basically glorified quick success. People always share good stuff, and they don't they always share the rosy and the stuff that gets you to feel that, oh, life is like always winning, always these hockey sticks, always these great moments. But and that makes some people sad, and it created a lot of social issues that we need to kind of be aware of, because yeah, to your point, being overly connected can be harmful, like anything. Like if we take anything, if we take salt, sugar, bread, even running is good, right? But if you do it excessively, it can hurt your knees.
Absolutely.
Same for connectivity. You have to be connected. You have to be connected in the best possible way, but in modesty, in moderation, not like, not like.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, it's so many people dream of instant success, right? And people look at startups and they're like, oh, I'm going to start a company and I'll do something in AI and in a year I'll sell it and I'll make, $100 million. And then I look at, somebody with your trajectory, this is not your first rodeo. You've done multiple startups, right? And now with Celitech, you've been at it for nearly 6 years, right? Walk us through some of the harder parts of that journey. Like, there are always ups and downs, right? And a lot of the downs is what people don't see. Was there a particular moment in this journey with Celitech that was particularly difficult? And if so, how did you get through that?
Man, I would say COVID has been probably our most challenging period, given we were focused and we're still focused on international travel. I mean, and when I started this, it was basically just before COVID. We were trying to go to market fast and build an MVP that, clients can test and take to market. And then COVID hit. And that was the moment when I remembered, like, from my previous experiences with startups, that when you start a startup, you have to build all these lines of defense you have around you to be able to survive these moments. And this is not like a moment. This is like once in a century event. Like last time we had such an event was like the Spanish flu, like whatever, 100 years back.
Yeah.
Now we're
long
having
ass
this
time ago.
So, but this is where I thought, this is where I'm going to test my purpose, the why, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And this is going to be, this is going to define me as a person. If it's going to break me, then probably I'm not worth doing this kind of, change that I'm bringing to society, or it's going to maybe help me become and grow stronger. So when COVID hit, obviously so many businesses had to shut down. We were at very early stages. I had to kind of go into bunker mode. I call it cockroach mode, and try to survive.
Cockroach mode.
and try to survive because it was tough for over 2 years. Even when travel started to come back to the local, let's say, travel in the US, we were still banned from traveling abroad, or we had so much restrictions. So people were not doing it for 3 years almost. So out of the 6 years, I had 3 years of like bunker mode. And that period, I mean, you get a lot of pressure, not only from the challenges you face on the business side, where the demand is non-existent. You're basically building the platform, trying to add features, trying to still talk to the customer or customers, but not without having much momentum or growth because they're not ready. But the other aspect was always, which is a common thing for entrepreneurs, and it's a psychological game in here, which is the following. You'll always get that pressure from the people around you who you love, and they love you, and it's family and friends who would see you going through this and will be like, why you're doing this to yourself? They try to help you in ways like whatever, sending you job opportunities, trying to
exactly.
But that adds to your problem.
Look, I found this job for you flipping burgers, Al.
Yeah. And that adds to your problem. But you can tell them that you stop it or whatever, because they're coming from a good place. They're trying to help you. But the psychological effect that you get out of that can be tremendously profound. You have to know exactly how to filter that out, because otherwise it can be so negative and it can add to the challenges you face. I have an interesting story about like my car. I used to have I love German cars, and during that period, I had an old BMW which was leaking oil, like a little bit of oil, because it was old, and I was driving it. So one time I visited a close relative, and I parked in their driveway, and it leaked like a little bit on their driveway. So when I left, they saw that, and they They called me. They're like, everything okay? I was like, yeah. Sorry, this is common for German cars because it's old, blah, blah, blah. Next time I'm going to make sure not to park in your driveway. But the second day, they started sending me these links for jobs. They were like, hey, if you need any help with finding a job or some. And I thanked them. I was so nice, but again, it felt like, oh my God, like I remembered something I used to say, which is the following: you have to always, as an entrepreneur, take the bricks that get thrown at you and build with them. So
right. I love that. That's great. That's a great analogy.
I try to channel that to kind of make it a positive energy instead of getting into a rabbit hole of negativity. So yeah, that's the second challenge, but that's a common one. I think any entrepreneur going through this journey will face that.
Yeah, and so when you got these, when you had pressure from family, when you had friends second guessing you, aside from this idea of building bricks with the bricks that they were throwing at you, which ostensibly were like soft bricks, right? Because they are your friends, they are your loved ones. What tools did you use, like mental or otherwise, to stay on the path that you were on? What techniques did you have that somebody watching this who's struggling right now? There's a lot of people struggling right now. What techniques can these people use to stay committed to the path that they're on? What worked for you?
Oh my God. I mean, it's a long list. I can start with the top one, which is basically...
Yeah, give us your top two or top three, whatever.
Yeah, top two. Let's start with the first one, which is basically sitting with sitting with myself and understanding, like reminding myself of these moments where I had to use the dial-up offline and try to load pages offline as much as I can to get the data so that I can do stuff. I reminded myself about, like, I tried to remind myself, why am I doing this? Like, I tried to kind of connect again to my purpose. Is it I'm trying to get rich? I mean, luckily I was rich even before that, thankfully and luckily, and I could break out of poverty. I could help my family as well, kind of, felt it as well and could grow with me. And I didn't have the urge of putting food on the table for the people I care about, but I could have I had the opportunity to sit with myself and say, hey, do you really believe in this? Is it something you really care about? Is it something down the road when things work out, you can look back at and say, okay, it's not only, the figures and the number of figures you're gonna get in your bank account. It's basically the people, it's the travelers, the joy that you brought to these people that you were trying to help connect. Mm-hmm. So that was first, because I think, you need to be honest with yourself. I told you, it's irrational to do startups because you're going against so many odds. Your success chance is 5 to 10%. So if you're a rational person, you're going to say 10% is not worth it. I better do like something at 50-50. So you have to have that purpose. Second was,
so you really have to believe deeply in why you're doing this, right? You have to have a belief that goes beyond money.
And honestly, like, you have to be honest with yourself, deeply honest. Like, are you doing it for that purpose? And yes, if yes, then how can that purpose help you, fuel, get the positive energy and momentum you need to go through all these hurdles that you're going to face? The second one is obviously friends and family. Like, the flip side of friends and family, you always have as well friends and family that know exactly what you're doing, maybe because they've been entrepreneurs, they've been in your shoes, so they take these bets on you. They'll be like, we don't care what you're doing, we don't want to get into the details, we just know you as a person, we're willing to take a bet. And then they help you in different ways: introductions, investments, sometimes just being a listener to your thought process, trying to help you clarify your reasoning on why you're doing this and how you're trying to survive, because it's always like default dead at the beginning. Like, when you're going from 0 to 1, any company is by default is dead. You have to always kind of keep it surviving till you get to the mode where it's default, surviving.
Got it. And one common issue that entrepreneurs have, right? And I see this especially with self-employed people, people who are solopreneurs. Think back to like the first employee that you hired, right? Not just in Celitech, but maybe in your previous startup before that, right? Before you were wealthy. How do you get over that fear of making your first hire? And how do you know when it's time to make your first hire?
So yeah, that's a great point. I think you always have to understand that going from 0 to 1 is a chain of experiments. You have to experiment with a lot of things: product, people, team, go to market, clients, So you have to be willing to go through that messy process. It's not like a clear cut process. You're gonna make mistakes. You just need to make sure that when you make a mistake, it doesn't kill you. Like, it's not like you're all in that on that one hire or that one feature or that one client. You have to always try to kind of, do experiments, but make sure you always have a fallback option. And the first hire is among the very, let's say, the most fundamental first steps you have to do as an entrepreneur, because before anything else, you're trying to convince another human being to join you on a journey which can be risky to their career, which gonna involve a lot of hardship, maybe in some different ways. So it's a test as well for you if you're doing a good job. So from your perspective, it's that kind of test, but that's a kind of a test. But like from their perspective, you have to be in their shoes to understand how they're gonna react. And you have to pick the best. You have to do your best to pick the best. Doesn't mean someone who has the most credentials or most education or most experience. It's a best fit, meaning you're missing as a solo entrepreneur to begin with, and then how that person can complement what you're missing, and not complement everything because it's just the first hire,
Sure.
but complement the most critical. So if you're a technical, like me, I'm a technical founder. The first thought would be, and I was doing sales throughout my career. You'd be always selling. But I thought, if I'm doing B2B SaaS, for example, I need to hire someone who knows how to sell to B2B SaaS, for B2B SaaS. So this is the kind of thinking process that kind of, I start with.
So the first hire is just to summarize a little bit, make sure I got this right. So the first hire is always somebody who, is complementing your strengths, something that, preferably you're not strong at, you don't really know how to do, but that they're potentially very, very good at doing, and that are critical to the business at that juncture, right? That's kind of the first hire that you make. So if you're not good in sales, you hire a salesperson. If you're not good technically, you hire a technical person, right? That's kind of where you start.
Yep, it can be a co-founder. Ideally,
Okay.
if that first hire, if you can make it the co-founder, that would be even better. But sometimes you may need to start with maybe more junior hires because finding a co-founder is like a bigger step, because you need to also test the chemistry, how you align on the purpose, what you're trying to achieve together. And it's along the same lines of trying to find a co-founder that complement what you already have. But it's about like gap analysis, like trying to understand what's you're missing and how to fill that gap.
I mean, let's talk about co-founders for a second now that you touched on that, right? Because I've seen so many people make this mistake. How do you go about finding the right co-founder? Like, what should the process look like in an ideal world, right? From this realization that like this is really hard, doing this alone. For starters, doing it alone is always much harder, right? And I always tell people, don't do this on your own. If you can find a way to do it with at least one other person, always opt for doing it with one other person. What should people look for when they're looking for a co-founder, and how should they go about finding one?
Yeah, I always say this is like getting married, because effectively you're getting married to someone on a journey, right? Like it's not like on
minus the sex
side.
part.
Exactly. So it's the stages are very similar. So you're dating, engaging, and maybe getting married afterwards. So if you can, obviously the easiest way is to tap into your friends and family kind of network, like friends, obviously friends of friends, because then it can help you expedite that learning process about the person. You need to learn a lot about that person. It's not only about like his or her credentials. It's a lot about his character as well, because you're trying to find here the best partner on so many levels, not only filling the gap of a technical or sales thing, but also filling the gap on a personal level as well. Like maybe you're not too outgoing or whatever. Like you need, you probably need someone who can help you talk to VCs or try to pitch on, let's say, at events or something. So you have to really think about like your top priorities on what you're looking for in a co-founder. You're not going to find the perfect fit, obviously. Like it's all about compromises.
Yeah.
But at least you try to minimize, what's the ideal co-founder you have in mind, and you'll never have all the prerequisites because you're just starting. You still have a lot to learn about during your journey. And then you try to see who can fit most of the criteria you have in mind. Some of the friends you may have may help you proactively. They may come your way without you even asking. So because they know you're starting, you may tell them you need like a co-founder. You're looking for someone to help you with sales or being a CTO to do tech product. And when they come across somebody they think can be a good fit, they may tell you, and that can be, I think, an easy way, but it may be slow, and you have to expedite that by talking to more people. So you go to events, you network with people, you try to talk to family, friends, especially in the space where you need that co-founder to come from, because this is where you can find the best fit.
How do you assess whether the co-founder that you're talking to shares the same values as you do and the same reason for doing the startup? And how important is that?
And that's exactly why I compared it, getting a co-founder to getting married, because you have to go through stages, because it's not like you find him or her like now and then in a week time you can say, okay, we're gonna be co-founders because that week was enough to learn about each other. If you can get the opportunity to work with them on a part-time basis, maybe for a while, for a few months, just to test, because theory is one thing, talking to them in an interview and checking their resume and their credentials is one thing. And then when you hit the ground with the challenges and the issues and it's another thing. This is where you need to see how would they react, how would they behave, how would they talk to you, how would they respond to noise. Because noise, I mean, that filtration process I referred to a little bit earlier is super essential about like being able to find out, okay, what matters versus what doesn't, to be able to say, okay, I want to focus on this. So you have to go through like a testing period, I would call it dating period, to be together for on a part-time basis, test the waters for a few months, and then if you see it's a good fit, then you can say, okay, officially we're jumping on this together.
We're getting married.
We think it's gonna work.
Right. Yeah, it's fascinating. I remember I had a co-founder in one company, and amazing woman, very talented. And then one of the things I didn't realize working with her is I never realized how important her family life was. She had two kids, one was a teenager and one was younger than that. And, after a couple of years of very, very hard work, and we went through some really tough times and COVID as well and all that stuff. She was working really long hours, taking on a lot of responsibility. I was out fundraising, so she had even more work. And one day she called me in tears and she said, I need to take a leave of absence. Like I'm gonna remove myself from the company. And she ended up being gone for 6 months, and it was part of what precipitated the fall of that company. Right, that company unfortunately didn't make it. And one of the things that I had not noticed, and because I never really asked or I never really paid attention, was this person before working with me had kind of worked on her own, part-time freelance for very talented, very good professional, had not really worked in a startup ever. Had not worked in a structured corporate environment for many years, and placed an enormous amount of value on spending a lot of quality time with her kids and going to soccer games and birthday parties and being home early to have dinner and stuff that in the Western world sometimes we take for granted, or we forget, or we ignore, much to our peril. And when she was no longer able to do that stuff for a protracted period of time, it gnawed away at her day after day after day after day after day, until one day it broke and she quit. And I had not seen it, and it proved to be one of the major reasons why that company didn't make it. And so I always look back on that and I was like, what could I have done? What should I have asked? What did I miss that would have made me realize that, that this person, it's not that they were not a good co-founder. It's that the amount of work that I asked of them and the amount of pressure that was on them was too much given these other parts of their lives that were so important. And so as a founder, you need to be able to see that, because when people want to join initially, they're all excited and everything's rosy and it's exciting to be part of a startup and there's all these opportunities and people don't see the shit. They don't see all the hard times that are going to come. They have not been there, especially people who have not done startups. And so you have to kind of anticipate that and realize that there's going to be tough times and try and somehow tease how they're going to react in situations like that. And I didn't do that. Right. And it was incredible learning. And now kind of as I'm onto, building this company, which is, more of a speaking, coaching, content, company. And I start looking for a co-founder. I'm painfully reminded that I have to do more homework and really understand the person more deeply before committing to them. That's super interesting. It's super interesting.
Yeah. Amazing story. And that's exactly why, Patrick, your second startup was better because you learned all these stuff and you were able maybe to better manage in the second attempt.
You've done several startups now, right? And so when you look at things that you've done at Celitech and you compare it to some of your earlier endeavors, what mistakes have you avoided that you made before?
I mean, so many of them. I can tell you, it's a long list, but I've done startups outside the US and doing startups outside the US were much, much harder for the following reasons. And that's why, the internet was, again, back to that moment where I used the internet to get to the American University of Beirut, where I studied my engineering. That was the first time I experienced the American dream or the American way of doing things. And that made me think, what? That's amazing. I hope that can be everywhere. And I traveled and did stuff, went to INSEAD, lived in the UK, China, Hong Kong, Middle East, you name it. So I started businesses there. I mean, one of the startups I don't talk about is at one point I built an engineering firm to basically help Procter & Gamble build the new assembly lines in Saudi Arabia to produce diapers that were new to the region, like one type of diaper that was like a slip or something. So it was always hard. It was always super hard, not only because of the stuff that you see in the go-to-market, but also because of the mindset about failure outside the US is completely different.
Interesting.
There are terms to describe failure. When you go broke here, people will say someone went broke and the system will allow you to come back to the system and build your life up. In many countries, there is a social stigma around that. And people are afraid of taking risks, not only because of the business risk itself, but because they would be perceived by the society as a total failure.
Right.
I don't want to name countries, but one time I was lucky to publish, early when I was very young, a paper on how you can digitize telco testing equipment. I was working for a company called National Instruments in Texas, and we helped basically digitize how you test telco testing equipment. That was a big success. I had to go publish it to be published, to have the paper published. So I went to that country and they insisted on calling me a doctor because I was the only undergrad in a conference all with PhDs. So I presented after the conference. They took us around and we went to this town where they said, this has the highest suicide rate of corporate executives, not even entrepreneurs. And they explained that in that culture or that place, if you fail as a corporate executive to meet the quarter or the year, you take your own life. And that for me was why? Why that kind of extreme reaction to failure? And then, I saw how people react to failure in the US and elsewhere. And then I thought, what? This is super essential and there is a reason why most VC money is here, why most startups and most sometimes I always say we run experiments as Americans, we run experiments with stuff that we shouldn't probably, maybe the presidency without talking about politics, but
that's a hell of an experiment.
Are the only country where a South African immigrant can come here, become a citizen, and launch rockets to Mars.
Yeah.
You know?
Very true.
So we had, we have tons of success stories, and these stories are not possible anywhere else, not only because of the resources. Some countries have tremendous resources, but sometimes it's the social norms, and especially around failure. So I learned not to be in a place where I'm gonna be bashed for failing a lot. Like I learned, and then I wanted to have a place that I can call home. So I picked the US, obviously LA. So the US, and I would say that's the main thing, because if you put yourself in an enabling environment, you will feel the lift, you will feel the tailwind, with what you're doing.
I've lived and worked in many different countries, not as many as you, but lived in 11 countries and moved quite a bit as well. So I totally get what you're saying about the stigma behind failure. I lived in South America for many years. I lived in Europe. I lived in Asia. And different cultures respond to failure differently, right? And in some cultures, you're right. I mean, failure is terrible. Right? It's like it's this stain that you just cannot rub off. And when I speak on stages all over the world for organizations and at conferences, I talk about resilience. And I have this, the signature keynote called Becoming Unstoppable, which is mostly for entrepreneurs, but it's also these days increasingly for business people, because there's so much change happening with artificial intelligence and everything else. And when I talk about, the 5 pillars of resilience, one of the pillars that I talk about, which is funny that you mentioned it, is reframing failure as learning. And so kind of like, if somebody from another country is listening to this and they are from a country maybe that is a little bit more conservative, where there's less entrepreneurship, where leaving your job, leaving a prestigious career could be viewed negatively, that maybe the dream is to work in a big company in that country, and they're worried about failure, they're worried about not succeeding. What would you tell that person to encourage them to, follow their purpose and give this a try, and to help them understand that, even if they don't succeed, things are going to be okay? What would you tell that person?
I would say the following. I mean, I'm still probably a little bit young to say that, but I feel like I love always to take wisdom from people who are more senior to me, that have seen life maybe for longer periods, and always say that this idea, which is the following: when you're closer to, let's say, to the end of your life, let's say whatever, in your 90s and whatever 100, you're not gonna regret the stuff that you've done. You're gonna regret the stuff that you've missed. You're gonna be like,
so true.
Was it worth it, my time doing slides every day for 20 hours as a consultant for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years? Did that make an impact? Did that make me happy? Yes, it gave me money. But like, have I had a regret that I haven't given it a try to do something that I loved, something that I cared about, something that would have made a difference? So minimizing the regrets should be always your driver, because we're here for a short period of time. I think as humans, like, we underestimate how fast life goes, but it goes fast. So you don't have much time. You just need to be attached, or let's say have a purpose for something, try to do it, to have joy. And that joy, that purpose, that kind of fulfillment will overtake all the negative effects that you will see along the way, including failure. Because to your point, if you frame failure as a learning process to get better, that's, I play tennis. One of the crazy stats in tennis is basically, take the top 5 GOATs, Federer, Nadal, Djokovic. You know how much is their winning rate when they serve or play? Give it a try.
40%?
It's a little bit higher. It's like 52%.
Yeah.
52%. Like, you would think,
exactly.
this is a GOAT. This is like greatest of all time. It should be winning like 70%, 80% of their points.
Yeah.
They only win 52%, which is a 50-50 chance. Sometimes it can be like your opponent making a mistake.
Yeah.
So you just need to stay in the game, stay resilient, have the mindset that will help you frame failure in a way that will drive you for more, not like pull you down and make you go into a negative cycle of, because you're dealing with a lot, like you're dealing with a lot of challenges. You don't need that perception or that stigma to be another layer. So surround yourself. One of my friends used to say, you're the average of the closest 5 people around. So
I've heard that too.
Surround yourself with people that can help you out with that. Also, like, saying it's not a big deal, maybe to remind you that it's not a big deal and help you reframe it in a good way.
I think you raise a super important point. Al, I think there's a saying that kind of summarizes a little bit what you just said that I want to share with our audience, which is, it's better to regret the things that you have done than the things you haven't done. And I think that is the best saying when it comes to life. I was just in Belgium for a week with my mother, who was in the emergency room, something potentially life-threatening, had a double pulmonary embolism.
Sorry to hear that.
I was flying back there, and I honestly didn't know if I was going to land there and get some very, very bad news. And then, I was there with her for a couple of days, and they treated her and everything, and she started getting better, and now she's back home. Thank God. But you do realize the finality of life and how little time we have. I think Michael Jordan once was interviewed and said, he missed something like 500 game-winning shots, right? And nobody ever talks about those. They only talk about how great he was. And so it's kind of like, you have to go out and give it your best chance and swing for the fences and realize that, if you don't succeed, you're going to learn a hell of a lot. Like, my last startup, when I shut it down, it was heartbreaking. I remember being on the Zoom call as I told my team and our coaches that we were going to shut the company down, and people broke down on the call, and there were gasps of surprise and sadness when I made the announcement we were going to shut down. But when I look back on those 4.5 years starting that company and everything we went through, we went through a social revolution. There was a massive civil uprising in the country at the time. Then there was COVID, and then there was economic problems. I learned so much in those years, and it was so valuable to what I do now. Being on stage, sharing stories about entrepreneurship, about success, about failure, about learning. I would never have had that stuff if I hadn't done that. If I hadn't gone to that country, I wouldn't have written my book. I wouldn't have started that company. We wouldn't have impacted all these people. We wouldn't have generated all this content, which has been, now viewed by millions of people across Latin America. And I continue to get messages every day on YouTube from random people all over Latin America thanking me for having developed this content, which was part of this company that no longer exists. Right now, it's on my YouTube channel as part of the content that I have as part of my brand in this new company in the US. But I always say, I learned so much, and it helped me grow so much. And now, I can turn around and I can share that learning with other people and hopefully encourage young people to get out there and at least make the effort. And that makes it all worthwhile. Winding down the episode, I have a tradition on this podcast, which is I have 3 lightning questions. I call it the lightning round. I ask 3 very quick questions and just get 3 very quick answers, and then we're going to close down. So we're going to pass to our lightning round of questions, if that's okay. And the first question for you is, if you had any superpower in the world, think of any of the super characters that or Marvel or whatever. If you had any superpower, if you could have any superpower in the world, what would it be?
To make people happy.
To make people happy. I love that. That's an awesome superpower. Very, very cool. All right. Question number 2. If you could have dinner with anyone in history, alive or dead, who would it be?
Isaac Newton.
Isaac Newton. Very cool. Okay. Interesting. And the last question of our lightning round is, what is the most powerful thing that you ever learned from a personal setback or failure?
That we worry too much about stuff that never happened.
That is so true. That is so true. That is so true, man. Well, Al, look, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. There you have it, folks. Al's journey is proof that frustration can be the fuel for innovation. From a traveler's pain point to a platform reshaping global connectivity, his story reminds us that purpose often comes from big problems that we refuse to accept. And if today's conversation in any way kind of inspired you, I hope that you'll share this episode with somebody who's wrestling with some of their own challenges. Maybe you know somebody who really wants to start a company, really wants to get out of their current situation and do something different. Because, by sharing this kind of content, you might just be giving them the inspiration that they need to make a meaningful change in their life. Al, thank you for your wisdom, for your story, for coming on the podcast and being vulnerable and sharing all this stuff with everyone. Thank you to everybody who listened to this. Until next time, keep stepping back, keep leaping forward, keep creating lives and companies and inspiration. and keep making impact and doing something with meaning and purpose. So thanks
you,
again,
Patrick.
Al, for being on the podcast today. Really appreciate it. I hope we keep in touch. I'm sure we will. And thanks for doing what you're doing, man. It's
Thank you, Patrick.
It's inspirational, and your story from Lebanon as well.
Thank
really
you so much for
appreciate it.
having me. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to discussing further when we meet.
Likewise. I'm looking forward to meet you in person. I think that'll be very, very cool as well.
Yeah.
So thanks for being on the show. And from everybody out there, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Leave us some comments. Leave us questions for Al or for me. Share it with somebody that you think might find value in this. And, don't forget to review us on your favorite podcast platforms or on YouTube as well. So, Al, thanks again. We'll see you next time. And that is it from us here at More Unfiltered.